Thought I would do this video mainly because it's a topic I wanted to talk about before, or for a long time anyway. And I've been sick all week with a cold that will not go away. So I feel like doing something, and I really can't do anything physical, so I thought I would do this and get it out of the way. Basically, it's talk about tool ergonomics and how much more important that is than say the individual specs of a drill or an impact driver or a saw or whatever. I always like to try out a tool, and I learned this quite a long time ago actually. I was on a job back in probably late 90s, I think it was, and the job was a school, and there was some form work to do. I was a carpenter there, of course, and the form work was the elevator base. All the schools that we were doing were two-story or above, and they always had elevators in them. And the elevator base is just concrete, foundation that was separate from the rest of the foundation that was usually formed and poured. And to do it, well, I guess the tools we had in the trailer, there weren't enough tools. I don't know what happened to them. Maybe they got stolen, whatever. Anyway, I needed desperately a skill saw to cut the lumber. And he went out and he got one. And the normal skill saw for framing and forming carpenters at that time, and probably is still today, although I can't say for certain that it was a few years ago anyway, was the usual skill saw, the Skill 77 one. And he bought a worm drive saw, but it was a DeWalt one. And after using that for a couple of minutes, I knew that I didn't like the way it was handling. It was too upright was the problem with it. Anyway, I did get used to using it after a while, but I would never buy that saw because of that, because it felt awkward using it. To get back to the saw again for a second, the specs for the saw were identical to the other one. I think they were both 13 amps, same speed, blade on the left side of the saw. So more or less identical in that regard. And build quality, the Skill one was more metal, the DeWalt one was more plastic, but I think that they would probably last about the same amount of time. But it was the way it felt and handled while I was using it that, made it so that I didn't like that saw or would prefer the other one. And that's what I think people should be doing when they go out to buy a new tool, is they should try it out before they buy it, and not pay attention too much to the specs of what this tool is, how many RPMs and how many amp hours the battery are and whatnot, because that really doesn't matter if you don't like using the tool. I've got an impact driver in my hand here. This is my older Makita one, and I use Makita tools for a long time in my day job. We eventually settled on this brand of cordless tools because of basically because of the performance and the ergonomics of it. As far as performance goes, it doesn't perform significantly different from others in this price bracket. You could say the Milwaukee or the DeWalt or even Bosch, or I don't know what other ones, but they're all comparable as far as performance goes. But what I like most about these tools is the way they feel when I use them. The grip is comfortable. Kind of a little bit difficult for me to keep talking on a stretch here because I either get too thirsty, I can't continue, or I start coughing. So get used to some breaks here. As I was saying, I had a DeWalt drill a long time ago. Like, all of our tools were stolen from our lockup and replaced it with DeWalt stuff. And what I found was the crook inside here was too tight, and it was really wrecking the corner of my hand here, the webbing between the thumb and forefinger. So I switched to that pistol grip drill that I turned into the Franken drill. I added the Makita battery to it so I could use it again. which I really haven't done much of that anyway, because I've got better drills. But that was another example. Now, I'm not cutting up DeWalt here, but I've found, for the most part, I've not had a lot of satisfaction with the DeWalt tools that I've bought. The skill saw way back, that circular saw that was too high and too awkward to use. I bought a sander, a random orbit sander, actually, after my the Makita one went kaput, and I returned it basically the same day after I got it home, and I used it for a little bit, because that's what I like to do. I want to get it out of the box, I want to use it and see if it's going to be suitable. I didn't like that either. It was like, I don't know, I couldn't get the feel for it. The feel was off. And so, and it wasn't just, a bias set up in my mind against this DeWalt brand because of my experience with the pistol grip, not the pistol grip, but the, very sharp corner in here where your hand goes, or this, circular saw before that. It wasn't that. It was something about the way it was working. And I'll have to mention it while I'm beating up on DeWalt. The first time I used their electric planer, I found that it was too tall. I've been using the Makita planer forever, and that's nice and low profile and low to the work. And I think that's really the way you want to have that tool. You don't want to have your handle or your hand way above the bottom of the thing. You'll lose too much control. So that's what that was, and I didn't like that either. Also, the cutter head in that thing, I think, was like 3 inches or something. So it was insanely huge, and it was intimidating looking. And anybody that uses an electric planer will probably have some concerns about planing part of their body with it at some point, or getting it snagged in their clothing when they're doing, taking it off the work or whatever. And that just looked like it would be more likely with that kind of thing. So anyway, I got 3 impact drivers here. I've got my Makita, I've already shown. I've got the Maximum one I got a couple years ago. I like this one. I like the feel of it. There's one thing that I don't like about it, and it's the way the switch operates. It's not variable. It's variable, but it's stepped. And I do not like that. I've come to not like that. This one is truly variable, as in it's, smooth, and it starts to work almost immediately after pressing it in the short amount of way, or, distance on the switch. And I like that a lot better than I like the step one. Part of the problem with the step one is it doesn't seem to engage sometimes. You can almost plunge the drill in, the trigger in all the way, and it's still not working. Of course, I can't repeat that on camera, but trust me, it happens occasionally with this one. Now, the DeWalt one that I've got here is the same type of switch arrangement as stepped. So, not happy about that. But this has another, I'm not going to call it a significant problem, but it is something that would make me pick up this one before I pick up this one. It's the distance from the back of the handle here to the switch. It's further, way further actually, than both of these are. My hands are not huge. I think I've got probably, normal size or average size male hands for a grown, man. But I find this is a little bit of a stretch here. It's like, the very tip of my finger is stretched out there, which maybe I'm nitpicking a little bit, probably I could very definitely get used to that kind of grip, but it just doesn't feel as natural as this one does. Your finger is more relaxed on this one because it's like it's all the way up, and then the first part is flat already before you're pressing it in. So it's like you're, whereas this one, you're kind of stretching for it there with your finger. Once again, it might sound like nitpicking, but these are the things that are important to you when you're going to be using a tool often. And that's what I think that people should be concentrating on rather than this individual specs of the thing. I mean, each of these impact drivers will probably drive a similar number, amount of screws in the same amount of time, but you need to be comfortable while you're doing it. You need to have confidence in what you're doing also. And that's where the variable switch to this one makes me feel more confident, especially when I'm driving, smaller screws, that I'm not going to, miss a step on this one and start driving it in at, more power than I actually want to. Okay, as far as impact drivers go, there's not really that much of a difference these days, not yet anyway. I guess they haven't figured out a way to make, a bigger one or one with more features or whatever. They'll get there, I'm sure. But I'm going to turn my attention to drills now. And here I've got the maximum drill, the small one here. And lately this has become my favorite one, even though it has that same step trigger on it as the impact driver does. That's not as much of a problem with the drill that you're just going to be drilling holes with. Also, I like how compact it is. I have a Makita one that's very similar in size, but I like the feel of this one better, actually. Now, I'm just doing my shop stuff, and I'm not doing my old day job stuff anymore. And if I was, this drill would not be suitable. This is not a suitable drill for the kind of stuff that I used to be doing, hanging doors, drilling holes in doors, every single day of the week. You really want to have a powerful drill for that. And that's where something like this would come in. Like this would be the, the cat's ass for doing doors and whatnot. It's heavy, it weighs a ton, but it's fast. It's really fast. And you really want, I know there are a lot of guys out there that will technically disagree with me on drilling holes in steel fast. But if you're working and trying to get the job done and you don't have time to fuck the dog, you want your drill to be going as fast as it possibly can to drill that hole through that steel as fast as you possibly can. You can't stand there for 10 minutes with the oil can squirting oil on the hole while you take your time with the drill on 500 RPM trying to save it, the little bit of strain on doing that. No, you got to drill that hole through that steel and get it done, get it out of the way. And that's where something like this would come in. This thing doesn't belong in the shop, though. This is not you really wouldn't need this. You wouldn't need this for using in your shop. Doing this stuff as a hobby. This is not a woodworker's type drill. This would be the drill that, like I said, a guy out on a job site would use. So a smaller drill, but you want to have a smaller drill with a big chuck capacity. You want at least a 1/2 inch because you want to put, you don't want to be handcuffed in that way. And the majority of these things in this price range actually come with 1/2 inch chucks, and usually they're keyless like this. And what else can I say about it? Shortness is often not an issue, but if you've got to get in somewhere tight and try to drill the holes, I know I was talking to a guy, a locker guy actually, did the lockers, installed the lockers inside of high schools, and he said he had a drill custom made to fit inside the lockers to drive the screws or do something inside there. It will fit inside there. And he claims that it was done at the DeWalt factory. And I don't know, I kind of take that with a grain of salt because it was a little bit of a, I don't know, I can't call him a bullshitter because I didn't catch him in any actual bullshit, but it didn't seem like this would be the kind of thing that they would do at the DeWalt factory, take bits and pieces from different, drills and put it together in kind of a Frankenstein monster type deal. But anyway, the drill that he had there was definitely shorter than the stock ones that you could get at the time. But I think that the work that was done with it was done by him. And he just said that the DeWalt factory did it to make it sound more impressive. Next up, cordless skill saws, or circular saws more correctly. Here I've got the Makita that you've probably seen in several videos. I've used it quite a lot. And I like these cordless saws because they have the blade on the left side like this. And you can see what you're cutting. I'm more used to using this type of saw blade arrangement than I am to using the typical sidewinder saw that's on the other side. I never did like that saw, and when I got the opportunity to buy a regular sidewinder saw with the blade on the left side like that, it was a Porter cable, which I still have and I still use. I bought that and I've been using that ever since until these came around, and these are great. These are good because they can run on batteries. So over here we got the DeWalt one, and they've put it on the right side, which I don't like. You know, they say that this is a right-handed saw, but it's not really. I mean, it'd be great if you're left-handed, you'd be able to see the blade better or the cut better. But you know what? It's all about what you're used to and what you want, you know, to get used to. Like I said, I got used to early on using saws with the blade on the left side, you know, the Skill 77 ones. So that's would be my preference, to be able to see that, you know, edge of the blade, the teeth of the blade actually cutting into the wood and the line without trying to strain my neck and, you know, look around. So that's another thing to consider. So I don't know if this is helpful for any of you out there. I know that there are a lot of people hung up on specs and build quality and all that stuff. And at the end of the day, those things do matter, but not as much as people imagine they do. I would put way more emphasis on how a tool feels while I'm using it than any of those things, because for me that's a deal breaker. If it doesn't feel natural while I'm using it, I don't want to use it. I'll find one that I do want to use.